been waiting and appreciate your patience. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, November 23rd. We have 3 items on the agenda. And we have with us, well, before I go there, I'd like to just a little bit of housekeeping. If you come forward to the microphone, please give us your name and address. And I'm not sure, how many cards do we have, Madam Clerk? All right. Oh man, the big 0. That being said, welcome, Councilman Huizar. We have 3 items, and let's start with our volunteers or people that take care of us in the commission level. And I believe we have with us Ms. Emma Castillo.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Castillo. I understand you are being considered for the Harbor Area Planning Commission.
Yes,
And would this be the first time?
the first time.
Okay. Can you share a little bit about yourself as it relates to the planning discipline or?
Right. Well, it's a joy and an honor. I'm very thankful to be selected for Harbor Area Planning Commissioner. I actually have a background in real estate. I have my license. I've worked in advertising for 5 years with Toyota Motor Sales, and then after that, I currently work with Balcon Corporation, who does advanced transportation solutions with electric trucks with the Port of Los Angeles, and to solve the emissions problem and just bring down the emissions in zero emissions trucks. So it's great to be moving forward in the same direction with the environmental laws and things that are moving forward for California. As well, I work with the Chamber of Commerce, board member, and also a voting member of the Port of LA Community Advisory Committee. And working with the Chamber, we've done a lot of great things in business development. I formed a committee for that specific effort for our area, the Harbor City, Harbor Gateway. Actually, I was born in Harbor City, raised in Wilmington, went to school in San Pedro and in Wilmington, and I work in Harbor City, so I know the areas quite well, and so we're really excited to get things moving in business. And so
So you are a local person
I'm moving.
who's done good, has
Yes.
come back, and giving back.
Yes,
to the
I went
city.
to University of California, Berkeley, and I think it was called "You're a Cool Burrito If You Come Back." Someone wrote that.
Great.
Yes.
Well, you could have stayed in the Bay Area, and I'm glad you're back. I appreciate your hard work. I think you've touched many of the stakeholders who have made a strong effort to improve that area of Los Angeles. In terms of affordable housing and how it fits into the stage of the planning and development process, what's your perspective on affordable housing?
On the housing currently, or with the future plans?
In promoting affordable housing.
Well, I think currently, in respect to housing and when it comes to expanding or shifting things around, I think it's really important not just to do it for the sake of saving time or money, but to really look at how those kinds of changes will impact the stakeholders, if it will add to what the city is trying to do to promote in that area, whatever it is that the city is focused on. Obviously, jobs is a top one, or anything that will promote some of the things I think that would lift morale or somehow be able to work in line with the city. I think it's really important, not to just make a decision based on, what is faster or easier, but take the time to see how that would really fit with not only the current zoning, but if there would need to be a change in zoning, or what direction is this plan trying to take, and just look at things a little deeper.
Thank you, and I think with the complexities of our environment, both from a financial as well as issues of need, and given this desire to be more expedient, we appreciate your feedback, and look forward to working with you. And Councilman Huizar, any questions, observations?
No, but I think Roberto knows that I just have one thing to say. What's that, Roberto?
Go Bears.
All right, that's right. Thank you.
They're everywhere. Congratulations. Okay, so we will be moving to recommend her as a Go Bears man, yes. Okay. And will be a strong recommendation from this committee. And I guess the filing of the forms have been completed?
The ethics is complete. We're still waiting for the background check.
Okay. So as soon as we're done with that, we can schedule for a full council.
Well, actually, I lost it. She's scheduled for council for tomorrow,
Okay.
but, so.
Okay, it should happen. All right. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to ask for the item number 1, Roberto?
Sure, council members. Item 1 is a presentation by the Department of Building and Safety. It has to do with the proposed finalists to study the development reform process in the city.
Great. I'd like to invite Mr. Brett Overham.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Huizar, thank you very much for having us today on what I consider a very exciting next step in the process to improve our development reform, our development procedures here in the city of Los Angeles. It was just actually a few months ago where the City Council, based on your recommendation, appropriated $500,000 from the one-stop money, not money competing for the general fund, not money taken away from libraries or police officers, but appropriated $500,000 from the one-stop money to retain some consultants to take a fresh look at the development process to see what improvements we can make. We went through a very extensive RFP, request for proposals. We got 7 companies that submitted. We boiled it down to 4. We boiled it down to 3. We boiled it down to 2. And we're presenting to you today to provide an overview of their work, the 2 consultants who have been selected in combination to do this study for improving our processes. And I do want to make clear that they are not here today to lay out the conclusions of what has been done in the study. They are here for step 1 of the study to talk about the methodology they plan on using on going forward. And we were introduced to speak because we are the lead department in terms of the contract administration, but we've done this in very close partnership with the planning department and with Public Works Bureau of Engineering. So I've asked, at your request, Mr. Chairman, Alan Bell from the planning department and Michael Cantor from the BOE to say a few words from their department's perspective before we introduce the consultants.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Alan Bell from the Planning Department. We're very excited and pleased today to partner with what we consider to be a dream team of development reform consultants. We're very pleased to be able to partner on this particular effort, which we think will have a very strong chance of absolute success, Bureau of Engineering, and then also the Department of Building and Safety. The timing of this development reform effort is very good, particularly for the Planning Department. 3 weeks ago, we released and made a presentation to this committee outlining our blueprint for 2011. where we outlined 8 strategic changes that we will be phasing in over the next 12 months for reorganizing the planning department. We really do view development reform and the reorganization as being two sides of the same coin. They all have a central purpose. So to answer the question from the planning department's perspective, what is development reform? We see it as creating better, more accessible, more transparent processes. They're going to benefit all stakeholders in the development process, and that will result in better, sustainable communities and neighborhoods across Los Angeles. So we're very excited, and we look forward to working with the consultants over the next 6 months in implementing their recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Good afternoon. Mike Cantor, Deputy City Engineer with the Bureau of Engineering. The Bureau of Engineering is also a very eager partner in development reform. We have been involved with development reform through the various iterations. And at this time, we're excited because I'll give you an example. We have a process that we call our Class B permit process, which, although it's a Bureau of Engineering permit, it goes into different hands, different departments, and different bureaus. So we look at this as an opportunity to really look at the process at the big city level and see if we can streamline, make it more transparent, and make it more customer friendly, because we can't solve the problem with the B permit ourselves. And so I'm very excited with the team that was selected. We're going to look at a couple of things. There's some process modeling that's going to be done that I'm very excited about. And we're also, the consultants are going to look at this in terms of an organizational change. And so there's a big focus on more of a strategic look and looking at it in terms of organizational change. So we are 100% behind the effort.
Thank you, Mr. Cantor. And I'd like to make an observation, and then I'd like to pose a question. I learn a lot walking in the hallways and being in the elevators and listening to conversations that are just there. I'm not eavesdropping, but they happen to be there. And so when I'm hearing conversations about, well, here we go again, another development reform, and didn't we do this 10 years ago, and what's different now? And I hear that from different personnel. And what makes me think that the departments are going to be able to embrace this at the different implementation phases, especially with personnel in different levels. I mean, folks that have been here for a while might say, well, we did this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what's different? And not to put you on the spot, but could you just share with me what's going to motivate, because your department, what makes this unique, what I'm finding exciting, this is the first time your department is involved with planning and building safety under one umbrella when it comes from the notion of business friendly, facilitating, cutting down time. And maybe it's not fair just to ask you this question, I should have asked everybody else this, but seeing and hearing what I know, and maybe I've been here too long.
I think it's fair. It's a very fair question.
If you can just, I'd like to get your observations on that, because these are real conversations I hear in the elevator and the hallways.
I think it relates to, if I'm trying to get my people to do a process improvement myself, separate from this, you have to demonstrate a little success. They have to see that it makes their job easier and it helps them out. And I give the B permit as a classic example. Many times the Bureau of Engineering, I mean, we're responsible for it. It's our permit. But when it leaves our shop and we don't know where it is, I think the Bureau of Engineering staff, when they see that we've actually changed that and it is more transparent, so the customer knows where it is, I think that they're going to buy into that. And that's just, we need to show some success on a smaller scale, and that's the way this project is going to go forward, is actions are going to get implemented as soon as we find the low-hanging fruit.
So the structural shift in how we engage each other within the silos of this city is the evidence we need to provide the confidence and perhaps the morale for the city staff to buy in.
Right. And I think there's also, at the staff level, at the staff level, my staff work with the planning staff, work with building and safety staff, and sometimes the problem is bigger. And so even though they really want to solve a problem, they can't. And I think this is our opportunity to maybe solve some of those bigger problems.
See, the conversations I hope will dissipate over time is when I was working in the planning department and I'm not picking on building and safety guys because I'm from the planning department, but these are real conversations. We'll say, well, we have to implement this because those guys in the horseshoe made that the ordinance. We're following their policy, now you're upset at us. You've got those kinds of gives and takes. And I think we need to put all this on the table so that those who are listening can sense that maybe this time we truly want to make a difference and build from what we've learned in the past. So thank you, sir, for your I didn't mean to put you on the spot, sir, but I think folks need to hear this kind of exchange. Councilman Huizar, any questions for our, okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, unless there are any further questions of staff, I'm prepared to introduce the two consultants, Gayla from DH and Bill from Wolpert, and they're all yours.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes, for inviting us, and thank you, the Plum Committee members and members of the gallery. My name is Gayla Craig-Hartso. I'm president of KH Consulting Group. I'm going to be handling the presentation along with Bill DeGraw from Wolpert. Essentially what I want to do is give you a very quick introduction of who we are and spend the bulk of our time on the approach and how we hope to bring about the kinds of changes you've been talking about. And I'm going to sort of fast forward through a couple of these. For those of you who are not familiar with KH Consulting Group, we've been in Los Angeles since 1986. We've served over 200 clients. We've worked in 25 states and 7 foreign countries. But our heart is here in Los Angeles. We've worked with most of the city departments. We've worked with all 3 of the proprietary departments. We've developed strategic plans for 1/3 of the county departments, including public works and regional planning. The nice thing about teaming with Wolpert is we thought we were old from 1986. They've been in business since 1911. So they bring a long history on land development. Both of our firms focus on government. They're rated as one of the top 100 firms in the nation in this area. And very specifically, they've done a similar process improvement initiative with the County of Los Angeles. And Bill was the project manager on that one. So the review panel actually brought us together as 2 different firms that had bid separately and felt that the combination would be a powerful one to work on this project. Approach. The RFP was very specific. They wanted us to go through a process of evaluation and research and quickly get into implementation improvement strategy plans. Unlike other studies in the past, which I would call more performance reviews and audits of specific departments, this is different because we are looking at the system across the city. And so we can come up with a more holistic perspective on the needs for improvement for land use entitlement, public improvement permitting, and building permitting. I mentioned about it being holistic. We're not just looking at process and technology, but we're looking at the organization, not only of specific departments, but the work culture. Planning has already put in a new structure. How are we going to staff it? How are we going to respond in terms of developing a learning culture so that it's not just the one time when the consultants are here, but once we leave, people are committed to making continuous ongoing improvements. We've set forth some project principles which you can read. I think, though, the overriding factor that we have to keep in mind at all times during this project are specific traits that we heard in the RFP process that you want this new system to have. User-friendly, efficient, so it's simpler, faster, transparency, so whether or not you're a homeowner or a developer or a private citizen, you know where a project is in the system. Accessibility, clear accountability in terms of what are the roles and responsibilities across the various departments, and that you're competitive, that you can stand toe-to-toe with other world-class land development processes in other parts of this nation and be proud of your process. One of the things that I think you'll find different from us, from other types of consulting firms and teams, is we are, one, very collaborative. We're very action-oriented. So when you talk about short-term initiatives versus long-term initiatives, we have found by using a collaborative approach, engaging the clients in identifying the need for change with us, and looking at the options that oftentimes they want to begin implementing the change and not have to wait till the end of a particular time period. We will also be very objective. I know that the land development process can become a political battleground. None of us are directly involved in these areas, and we'll be looking at it from a business perspective and what makes sense for the citizens of Los Angeles and for better government. Now, I will share with you, our firm also does management audits, and you've had a lot of audits, and it's probably a very appropriate tool to identify the problems. But I've also have found that oftentimes they result in sort of a pushback where people feel like they've been graded harshly and they do not result in the kinds of desired change you want. So we have found that it's much more effective if we involve the departments in the entire process so they understand what we're uncovering, that they help build with us the recommendations, and that way, when we leave, the decisions stick. It's not just an outside auditor coming in and saying, this is how you should go about doing it. I loved your earlier question to Michael with engineering about how do you get people to change? And one thing we have found almost in every organization, you're going to have the people to the far left of the normal curve who say, over my dead body will this change occur. I'll just wait, this fad will go away. I've seen a lot of leadership come and go. I've seen a lot of different initiatives, the ones from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but it's not going to happen now. What we try to do is engage the people at the other end of the spectrum. I call them here the gung-hos. Oftentimes they represent new ways of thinking, they come from other jurisdictions, they've worked in multiple departments, they have a more flexible way of looking about it, a problem. And indeed, they want change. In fact, usually when we come in, they will say it's about time. And they're the very ones we want to engage in the change process because they should become the future leaders for making it happen. And if we get them engaged, we find that the middle group are sort of those who are sitting on the seesaw. Maybe I'll change, maybe I won't. The gung-hos overpower them, you won't have the change. If we can engage the people in thinking about this is a better work world, this will make better customer service. In fact, I'll have a happier way of looking at my career and going forward. They're going to go along with the gung-hos, the ones who want to have change happen. So to do that, we're proposing that there be an overriding group, not just a steering committee, but a real work group that would work closely with us. And we've asked each of these departments, engineering, building and safety, and planning, to identify people who would be part of this core group, that they should be people who not only can be future leaders, but know more than one process, that they are receptive to change, they believe in customer service, they think strategically, and that they've been solid performers over time. And by engaging them, we're hoping they will become our strategic thinkers, our change agents, the good communicators, and we'll be giving in exchange to them the skill sets and the leadership to help bring change about. Now, the other audits we've looked at in the past have been pretty city-centric. People have been interviewed within departments and across the city government. This is different because we also want to get input from the external stakeholders. We all know the internal side. The external, though, includes regulatory agencies, Air Quality Management District, other agencies you interface with, community and neighborhood groups, individual users, civic groups, professional organizations, developers, and consultants. And we're proposing holding 8 large forums where they can come together and we can discuss and explore ideas and issues. You already have your DRAC, which is a development industry group established that we'll be interfacing as well. We're going to give the stakeholders a lot of opportunity for input. We hope we can engage the Plum and other city council members to help spread the word, not only about the various focus groups and town hall meetings that we'll hold around town, but we'll also have an online survey. And the survey itself we're going to design to be very brief. We want people to quickly identify what the issue is, but we're going to ask them to come up with suggestions that we feed into the process of how it can be changed. You are not short on a lot of people telling you what's broken. The challenge is coming up always with not only how to fix it, but how can we organizationally move the organization to make those changes. We talk about short-term and long-term recommendations. I think to date we know that there are well over 150 recommendations that have already been made. We're going to have to go through a process early on to find out what's been implemented, what hasn't been implemented. When it hasn't been implemented, was it not implemented because it was a bad idea, or just because we didn't have the resources, or we didn't have the context to make the change. We'll be stratifying a lot of these recommendations early on so that we can look at those that might have a high impact and would be important to do, but we can't do them right away, versus those that are easy to implement. We should have already implemented them. They're your short-term initiatives, and we often refer to them as our low-hanging fruit. The other thing that we'll be doing is benchmarking. And rather than finding just 5 cities that match with you, we've decided in talking to the review panel that it would make sense to have it be issue-based. So as we identify an issue with the IIT and we're hitting resistance to change, that would be the time to say, okay, what are other jurisdictions that have addressed this challenge? How are they doing it? Let's get them on Skype. Let's talk to them. Let's get more input so we can open up people's minds in thinking about other ways of approaching the problem. And then the core part of this, and I'm going to have Bill cover this, is really looking at the specifics of the process and the technology, because we know that will be one of the big drivers in terms of transparency and efficiency.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. As Gail said at the beginning, we take a holistic approach to this process.
Can you get closer to the microphone?
Okay. We take a holistic approach to this process, and we look at 3 components. We look at the processes, and we look at the organization, and we look at the technology. In this particular project, Wolpert is going to be taking the lead and looking at the processes and looking at the technology and making sure those are aligned, and working with KH to make sure then those support the organization. So it is a holistic approach. The first part of the process we do is to actually look at your business processes, not just within individual departments, but actually across the departments. Because a lot of the things that we found in the past in other agencies, similar agencies, is that within a department, the processes aren't that bad. It's when you go between department to department that things get lost. Things get put in a holding bin waiting for some other department to do something. The citizen comes in or the developer comes in and says, what's the status? And people have to get on the phone and make the calls all around to see what's going on. So we look at these processes across organizations as well. We're going to create a vehicle, work groups, small work groups for workshops to analyze the processes, look at them, and we use a computer modeling tool to create these processes and capture the data about the processes. Things like what resources are used, and what is the expected time frame for these processes? How long should they take? That type of information. We model those into a standard set of models that we have the ability to quickly change as people refine and define them. And then we can develop future models. And we can do comparisons between the current as-is models and the to-be models. We even have the capability to run simulations, so we can run examples of caseloads or how much workload might be going through these processes and what that might mean in terms of resources and staff required, what kinds of backlogs might be generated by increasing levels of caseloads. And so we'll be looking at all of those kinds of factors. We'll be looking especially at performance and efficiency, making sure that we're identifying where performance metrics need to be captured so that in any resulting system or process, we can identify the work measures that need to be captured so we can assess whether or not the process is working accurately. A lot of this, and I've dealt with land development processes in other organizations, and a lot of it comes down to, as your organization's already identified, developing an efficient case management capability, because we are talking about case management here. really what people are looking for, and these are some of the principles we'll be looking for as to how we can establish this here, is total visibility of the cases across the organization. Citizens should be able to walk into any city office and get the same answer about their case in terms of its status, where it is, what's been done on it, what's pending next, what fees have been paid, all of that. We look at positive control of tasks and referrals. A lot of what's done in land development is assigning tasks to people to check certain things on the plan, referring to other agencies for their comments and such back. That all has to be positively controlled so you know exactly where everything is. Setting and tracking conditions of approval, that's one of the key things that as a case goes through, we assign conditions of approval to it to make sure certain things happen as the project is constructed out. Approval and denial tracking, those are things that, we need to know when it got approved, when it got denied, when it's scheduled to be resubmitted, so we can schedule and plan for resources to it. And basically taking all of this information and putting it into a single repository where people can get access to it, and looking at doing things like putting out web pages where the status of cases can be available for contractors and citizens and community groups to look at. And then utilizing some of the advanced technology that's coming along for electronic plan checking, workflow, and tracking the cases. So there's a lot of things we will be looking at in terms of case management technology. We're also going to do a review of your current technology, and as Gayla said, we'll be doing benchmarks against other major organizations similar to you that have actually been recognized as doing good work in this particular area, so that we can cull the good ideas from them and try and bring them in here and get some of the best practices moved to the city of Los Angeles. We'll assess your current technology and with an eye on what things would we be able to retain, what things could we build on, and what things are going to just simply need to be replaced. So we'll look at all of those things from a technology perspective. We'll also do department staffing review. As we build our models, we'll begin capturing information on full-time equivalents, length of time it takes to do particular processes, the resources needed, and we'll build those into the models. So hopefully we can do some simulation and actually look at what the impacts of changing some of the processes are in terms of staffing and staff requirement. And then I'm going to turn it over to Gayla for the final slides.
So bottom line, our intention is not to deliver to you one more report where you have a bundle of recommendations and very little gets done. What we want to do is give you a strategic framework for change. We want to build in momentum and a desire for change. We want to have successes on some of these short-term initiatives, and we'll be leaving behind for you a strategy, a strategic plan with action plans of what are the remaining things to do in year 1, year 2, and year 3 to keep the momentum going forward. We also will be outlining how you will monitor it and hold various groups accountable for the needed change. So one of the big outcomes I think you're going to have at the end, if we are successful in this process, is a culture of what we would call continuous process improvement. So you're not facing a situation every 5 years, well, now that we've gotten behind, what are we going to do now? But you become a proactive, progressive city that you want to be. The rest of the documents in your packet are really appendices, and there's information if you want to know more about each of our firms, about the actual team members, and some of the change tools in terms of the process technology that Bill talked about. Otherwise, we'll take your questions.
Thank you. In terms of, and this is a delicate balance. When we speak of product versus expectation, back in 2008, there was a declaration of 12 to 2. And the feedback we got is great. We no longer have to take 12 steps. Now it's 2 steps. We streamlined it so efficiently, but it didn't happen. Now we have a planning department that is at 60% of what it used to be 2 years ago. A building and safety department that's lost 20% of its personnel. We have a personnel structure that makes it hard for the individuals to move from one place to another in title and function. And so when we speak of product
Right.
in action plans, what I'm hearing you say is that we'll be able to address those issues as well, or is it going to give us a roadmap in which now, with the goodwill of the mayor's office and cooperation of the council, we can start doing the necessary policy changes that addresses those efficiencies? I'd just like to get a perspective from you on that.
I think you're going to find there's going to be a variety of different types of actions. Some will be policy, and they're going to require your involvement. And obviously, a lot of them are going to be process improvements and technology. We're going to be getting down to some very specific realities, and that is, what is your current staffing configuration? How dependent are you in terms of some of the loss of expertise you've had in terms of early retirements? How can technology help fill that gap? I also think it's very important to think very much going forward in terms of the future and what is the staffing configuration going forward. When you do need to bring in replacement staff, what is the skill set you want them to have? What is the right job classification within the personnel system for them? What's the kind of attitude and flexibility and knowledge in terms of learning new technologies? Right. I find oftentimes during these hard fiscal times that we're facing, it's actually easier for me as a consultant to bring about change, because people realize the old way of working won't work anymore. They have been stretched. They're filling in for 2 jobs that have been vacated. They know they're very labor and paper intensive. And it actually sometimes opens up the thinking to new possibilities because of the need to solve their current crisis that they're in. So I do see this as a good opportune time.
And this is a delicate issue because of the negotiating factors that are out there with the unions, but when you look at the role of the unions in this process, how does that get folded in, given your recommendations?
Yeah, we've worked extensively in the city and the county of Los Angeles. All of them are unionized environments. We're very familiar with the personnel code and the union rules of how you work within them. We're very transparent ourselves in our approach. We encourage labor to be actively involved in helping to come up with the solutions and to be part of the change process. I have frequently found that when you all sit down together, whether or not it's the silos of the departments, union versus management, external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, and you start talking about how should this work in the long term, what's the right vision, what's broken, how would you like it to work, there's a lot of commonality that oftentimes, given our history, we're not hearing. You know, we think it's only our problem, and all of a sudden we realize that everyone is facing the same problems, and now we can roll up our sleeves and begin to focus on real solutions.
Thank you for that. Councilman Rizar, any questions or observations?
Yes, I just want to go back to one of the basic things. And how would you describe, what's the problem? Why are we doing this?
My understanding of why you're doing it is the system itself has been built around organizational silos, that you have different technologies that do not speak to each other, that each department has done their own problem solving, and that you haven't taken a system-wide solution. I also think that it's important to balance both the needs of homeowners and developers and others in terms of understanding if they have a project, what's the process we go through to either find out if it can be approved or not approved? What are some refinements we may need to make in order to have it be approved?
That's good. The reason I asked that basic question is because we've taken the problem that we have in developing in the city of Los Angeles as we want to expedite the permitting process, which is great. But sometimes we also have to consider that there are other stakeholders, community groups, neighborhood associations, that we don't want to slow down the process, but should have some purview as to this renewed, newer type of permitting in the city of Los Angeles that will make it easier for us to come to a decision. It's not so much that we want to develop the heck out of ourselves, it's just that we have to come to a decision quicker and make it more not have as much risk involved for developers who, in our current process, in my opinion, It could go sideways at different decision points, and it takes months to get there.
Or years.
Or years. So I think you're right. That I'm glad to hear that you mentioned the balance that needs to be struck there, and that's very important. Now, is this the last we hear from you before we see the final report? Are you going to come up and give us updates and tell us how it's going? Or?
We don't have the contract yet,
Okay.
but once we do, we're happy to come and give you updates, particularly at milestones. It depends
Mr.
upon
Chair,
your
if that would
interest.
be, I don't want to slow them down, or I know we have a huge docket, but if halfway through, they probably could give us an update on what they're finding. That'd be great.
I believe that would be a healthy cycle to implement, and working with the mayor's office and making that happen. My understanding is that this is a 6-month window. It's a very ambitious schedule, and we want to get into some results sooner than later. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so maybe within 2 months, you can come back and we can have that discussion. Maybe have a presentation or an update that gives us a sense of where it's going.
Yeah, and I think it'd be good, it's around 2.5 months, we'll have the stakeholder input compiled. We'll have gone through all of your recommendations. We'll have the IIT formed. We'll probably have interviewed over 50 people. So that would be a very good timing.
Another major factor is going to be ITA. They're doing a whole system-wide overview, and some of us are feeling the pain of that, but I think eventually we need to fold that in how we actually communicate because of the infrastructure. It's just food for thought. But you're the expert, so we'll wait and see. Anything else, Councilman Huizar? Any other comments or observations?
No.
Okay. First, I want to thank the mayor's office. I know the council, and I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Huizar, and the council. We moved the $500,000 to make this happen, but we know from the contract administration executive side of the city, the mayor's office and the leadership of Brett Overham, Alan Bowell and Mike, Mr. Cantor have been working together to put together the environment to set this 6-month in motion. So there has been some work to build up to this, but now this is where the rubber hits the road, correct? Mr. Overham, might come into the microphone? When you did Councilman Huizar's update, is that something you're comfortable with?
Yes, I think that's very appropriate. They haven't had a contract yet, so I don't start counting the 2 months until they have a contract. But
Right.
I think that'd probably be around March or so, end of February, March. I think that'd be very appropriate. I think the idea of reporting back to you is an excellent idea, and I think 2 months is early enough and not too early.
I thought they had a contract already, but, quite frankly, when you made your presentation, I thought you're still selling yourselves to us, but I see why you haven't finalized the contract. So it's a mix of, this is what we're going to do, plus let me show you who we are more. So it was interesting.
Yeah, and I thought it was important, Councilmember, is that we wanted to create an environment in this committee to show where we're going to go and how we're going to do it, so that way when they start seeking out the stakeholders, I'm sure they're waiting to have that input, and that we wanted to make it very clear that we want to be an open and a transparent process. And this is the reason why we took this step. So I appreciate Mr. Overham and the mayor's office for indulging the committee and having this environment created. I think my last statement would be one in which, given the cycles of our economy and how we look at our resources in the general fund, and how we look at the notion of balance between the tensions of little development, too much development, compatibility, and strategic planning, that we actually start understanding that if we as employees, as public servants, don't take care of our municipal corporation, if you will, our ability to function, provide services is compromised. And so how we become efficient allows us to better serve our community, serve Los Angeles, and take care of our employees. And I think if anyone can buy into that, and hopefully the naysayers or the folks who've been here for a while saying, oh, here we go again, this sounds good, it's a great press release, it's going to go away in 3 months, that's not what's happening here, that we're going to actually push hard and see some results. So I want to thank Mr. Overham, the candidates for this consultant contract, and the staff that's been with us. And we can note and file, and as much as this was informational for the committee and for the citizenry. And good luck to you. Roberto, anything else?
Just note and file, and you also wanted the report back in 3 months, right?
Yes, sir. 2 to 3 months, we'll let them make that determination. Anything else?
Item 3, I don't know if there's going to be a director's report.
He's not here today, and he joined us the last time, but we couldn't get to him, so hopefully he's not mad. No, just kidding. Anything else?
Public comment.
Anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Hello, Mr. League. Thank you very much.